Great.
That's a win.
Perfect.
Hopefully you can focus on your side of it with your noise, but it's not a problem for us.
Good.
So a couple things that I wanted to chat through. I've been getting messages in from the Motherhood Together group, some of the moms in there. So for those of you who are joining us and are new to Happily Mom and what we do, Happily Mom is a company I started a couple of years ago as a means to fill in the gap. Once moms have baby, you get home, it's stressful and overwhelming navigating life with a newborn and trying to figure out where to get answers to your questions. So breastfeeding being such a big stressor mentally and emotionally. So Abbey and I have teamed up together to bring you some practical support. I lead a membership program that is a warm and welcoming group of moms for moms, where you can get expert coaching and support so that you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying your baby, specifically designed for new moms. So inside of our Motherhood Together, I got a message this week about milk supply. And this mom has a little one who is, I think, around 4 or 5 months old. And baby is, I'm not sure all the circumstances, but baby is hesitant at the breast. And this is something that started over the last, several weeks, that baby was not as comfortable at the breast. And so mom decided to move towards pumping. So she is pumping full-time now and has a little bit of supply issues that she is navigating and needing to supplement. So I thought it'd be great timing for us to kind of chat a little bit about milk supply expectations. How do you know you have a good milk supply? So Abbey, can you talk to us a little bit about milk supply? Let's hit the first question. How do you know if you have an issue with your milk supply? How would you know?
That's such a good question. I would say milk supply is the number one frustrating thing about breastfeeding because that is, especially I think in our culture, we want to see like supply and demand. You want to see an equal amount. Like this is how much something contains, and I want to know and prove that it is there. And that's what's so hard about breastfeeding is you don't know. And so similarly, very rarely would I like lay out everything unless I was on a diet or something really strict. Very rarely would I lay out every single piece of food that I'm going to eat during the day or a beverage I'm going to consume. It's really hard to know. But our telltale signs are a couple of things, and the numbers give us the answers is basically how we know. And so if you have visited your pediatrician, looking at your baby's growth curve is the way that you can see if they're on track. And at under 6 months of age, a baby should be gaining about 2 pounds a month in weight. And so if your baby is doing that, then and you are breastfeeding solely and having no supplementation, then your supply is good. And then the other thing you look for, so you're saying, well, my check-in with my pediatrician isn't for 2 months. What do I do? That's when we look at elimination. So is my baby having around 6 wet diapers a day? This is post a 1 week old baby. So after 1 week, we're expecting a baby to have about 6 wet diapers. And when I say wet diapers, you're really wet. Like think about pouring a bottle of milk or water into a diaper. Like you're wanting a full wet diapers or like several small diapers, but 6 well wet diapers and at least 1 to 2 stools a day. And so that's kind of how you know, okay, things are happening. If a baby has no you're suspecting that you have a low milk supply, you're watching it, your baby's singing fussy, something seems off, you're kind of I don't know. And you're seeing like less than 1 wet diaper every 8 hours. That's kind of when I think, okay, we really need to supplement something quicker. And then let's go have a backup plan. Like let's check with the doctor, make sure we're on track or something. But Over 8 hours with nothing, no wet diapers, no elimination, that is concerning that your baby probably needs more fluid. So that's kind of the long-term and short-term answer to that. But
Okay, so if we recap that,
yeah,
if we recap that for all of the sleep deprived mom brains out there, like mine, that are like, hold on a minute, wait, what did you just say?
Wait. Yes, thank you. Recap it for us.
Yes. So it's ideally we're looking for a baby putting on about 2 pounds of weight every month.
Yes.
And that is after what point? Is that
great question? Great question.
Month number 1, month number 2?
That's after your 2-week well visit. So at 2 weeks, we're expecting that your baby gets back to birth weight. And then after that, you're hoping for about 2 pounds a month or an ounce a day. That's another way to say it. But yes.
I'm going to just jot some notes down so I don't forget these points that we're going to summarize. Okay, so after 2 weeks old, at about 2 weeks, we want baby to reach their birth weight. And if your baby has surpassed their birth weight prior to 2 weeks, fist bump for you. You're doing great. Your baby's doing great. Okay. And if your baby's having a little trouble getting back up to that birth weight, we're going to talk to you in just a minute about what to do about it. Right.
Yes, we are.
So after that 2 weeks, then kind of the goal that we're looking for is around 2 pounds. And for those of you who love numbers and are going to take this and create a little formula for how to mathematically track what your child is doing, let's just take a pause and remind ourselves that breastfeeding is not mathematical.
Yes,
it is much more an art form than it is a science. There's science behind breastfeeding, but when I'm working with moms postpartum and they've just delivered their baby and they've got this sleepy newborn that's under 24 hours old, and I'm coaching them through breastfeeding in the hospital, it is not if you do this and this, your baby's going to get on great. You're going to have great milk supply. Everything's going to be awesome. And you're going to know and feel confident. Like you know what you're doing and feel confident. It's much more this. We take a lot of these suggestions and some of these firm facts, and we use them sort of as guide rails so that we know we're headed down the right track and that we can feel like we're putting pieces in the story together so that we can get kind of a bigger picture of what's going on. So it's less like zooming in and committing 100% to all of the, data. It's allowing ourselves as moms who love all of the order and predictability and love the mathematics behind things and want our baby to also love it. The only caveat is our children do not read the textbooks. And so they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So they break the rules all the time. And then we circle back around as providers and we're like, oh, and this isn't supposed to be happening, but it is happening. And so let's try a different trick.
Yes, absolutely. And 1 month is a long time. 1 month is not, you can't predict that something didn't pan out in the last 2 days. Like that's not going to help. So it's an average.
And it takes a little bit of a zoomed out perspective, right? Like for instance, Moses is my youngest and he's somewhere between 6 and 7 months old. I haven't done the math yet. But he got sick. We went through like the family stomach bug and here's little Moses already on the petite end of things and he's throwing up. And so obviously he's going to lose a little bit of weight. So if you've got a kid who goes through a sick spell and you've not hit the 2 pounds that month, you might see that the next 2 month later check-in, your kid's gained 2.5 pounds because he's made up for what was lost. And kids don't always grow predictably. Sometimes it's more of like a staggered little spurts where maybe they were a little slow this month and then they like doubled up the next month. So everybody is a little bit different pace, but these are kind of the guide rails. So we know like, okay, this is kind of what I'm aiming for. I'm going to give grace if it doesn't hit exactly like this. But if for certain your kid is like consistently putting on 1 pound at a time, we have a problem. Then your kid's probably like my small child who is growing exceptionally slow. So plenty
He is
long,
cute.
plenty
He is
light.
cute.
It's cute. He's really scoring high on cuteness skills. We just need to
Absolutely.
convert those into some pounds. So, okay. So here we are. And some of these questions are also prompted from my journey where we found ourselves. So let's say you determine you have a little bit of a low milk supply, and you don't have the freezer stash to, keep up. I just have to make a comment on the freezer stash because it is a huge frustration for me. YouTube will lead you astray. There are many non-professionals, like and Abbey and I are both nurses who have been professionally trained, who work professionally in this context. And so it is a big frustration. I don't know, Abbey, if you have the same thing where it's sort of social media craze to have a freezer full of milk. And if you happen to be that mom who orders a deep freeze for all of your milk, that's awesome. But there's also a large amount of like embarrassment, feelings of shame, feeling like you're not enough for your baby if you don't have a freezer full of milk. And I mean, I even see moms who will get mastitis multiple times because they followed a YouTuber's advice on, and yes, we are on YouTube, but we didn't get our start on YouTube. Okay. And we didn't just figure it out as moms. We figured it out in addition to being moms, right? There's problems. What if you have like this oversupply and what does a mom do if she has, a lot of milk, but it's maybe because she's overstimulating and feeling like she needs to pump a ton because she needs to have the freezer stash. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree. It is a frustration of mine as well. I mean, our bodies, until I should actually know what year, I'm not sure, but the electric pump is something new. I mean, we've been breastfeeding our children since the beginning of time. And so, because of that, it's a very new concept that we need all this extra things. Like your body was created to give your baby what the baby needs in 24 hours. Like there wasn't refrigeration system. Sorry, like it's you or your friend that's if you have a low supply, like we're going to our friend to figure it out. But it is a new concept, and it's not the way it was originally was. And so I understand the anxiety of, like, especially if you're working full time, the feeling of I want to have a backup. But I have had several clients that like exactly what Joyanna was saying, oversupply can become just an evil issue when you're so engorged, you're having infections, there's a lot of problems, and it is a process. Just like it's a process to get your milk supply up, it's a process to get your milk supply down. And it's also, because it's an art, not science, it's very hard to um, make those adjustments, and so sometimes you overcompensate, and it's kind of a yo-yo game. So really,
Sure.
just remembering, you in 24 hours, you were created to make what your baby needs. And so if you have anxiety about that if you have anxiety about creating a stash, you don't need it. Now there are strategies to get you to what you do need to feel peaceful, like you can go to work the next day. And also just know you're not necessarily better off if you have the stash. So
Sure.
yes.
Yes. And honestly, I've seen, unfortunately, the mental health impacts that stash can cause.
Absolutely.
Both in, like, I remember in one of the breastfeeding support groups that I was helping to lead for one of the hospitals in the area, there was a mom who had a whole freezer like full of milk. And guys, if you have a whole freezer full of milk, in like, it's 90% likelihood that you will not be able to ever use that milk because it goes bad. Yeah. And if you are so far ahead of that curve of what your baby needs at that time developmentally, that milk is not what they need. Let's say you pump a ton at 3 months and they're 18 months old and you have all this milk that is stockpiled. You're feeding them 3 months old milk for a 3-month-old at 18 months. And it's not what they need now, right? Because it's not current with their development. But she had the deep freeze in the basement and did not know that the electricity went out to the breaker in the freezer, and lost the entire freezer full of breast milk. And it sent her into a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Because she had so much anxiety about having to have so much milk, not just the like, I lost all this milk, but the dependence of like my security and knowing my baby is okay and safe and my mental stability is contingent upon, like it's breastfeeding is such a personal thing. And that's why we do breastfeeding together. It's why we started doing these calls. It's like, because there are so many factors that fold into the equation. So I always tell people, do not sacrifice your mental and emotional health for the sake of breastfeeding. Like, you as a human, we need to get you healthy and whole, because regardless of how baby is fed, you're going to be this baby's mom. And we got to prioritize the things that need to be prioritized first.
Absolutely.
So now we've chatted a little bit about supply stuff. How, if you, let's say you determine, okay, let's take it from the low supply end of things. I need to supplement my baby. How do you know that you need to supplement? How much do you supplement? Do you start with just like one bottle? What are some of the metrics, some kind of the ballparks of like, how many ounces first off does my kid need to make? Because I'll say from my experience, I'm pumping, and my son he's 6.5 months old, and I'll bring home anywhere from, I work in the hospital really long hours, and it's really hard to get pumping breaks. So I shoot for 3 pumps in 14 hours, which is probably not enough, but it's about as many as I can get at this time. And I'll bring home about somewhere around like 18 to 24 ounces of milk. And we don't have any extra. There's not a freezer stash. We already went through that one. So the freezer is empty. But if I'm bringing home about 25 ounces for like a 6-month-old, what are some of those metrics? How much of a gap do we need to fill in?
That's a good question. And one thing that I like to remind people as well is parents that do formula have these same issues. When I was a pediatric nurse, I would get calls all the time. I'm sending my child to daycare. I have no idea. They're drinking formula. How much do I put in the bottle? What does my baby need? So no matter where you are, if you're full-time supplementing, part-time supplementing, it's always the question, because babies can't talk to us yet. And so, but a baby under 6 months of age. So again, we're kind of looking around the 2, depending on your baby, the 2 week to 1 month old child, to about till when they start solids, which is usually around 6 months. You're looking of around 25 to 30 ounces a day. It's like a 24-hour expectancy. So that's what, and some babies require, I've seen a couple moms really find that they need around 32, just to feel like the baby, like that is their baby seems their metabolism high or something like that. But if someone can hit 30 in 24 hours, to me, I'm really confident that you're hitting the mark. And so when solids come in, it's actually an incredibly large scale of how much, it's very different for every baby and how much solids they're consuming. And so the milk supply, it can be all over. But think about 30 or 32 as the max. So, so somewhere between.
You said 2 weeks to 1 month. What about
I know.
1 to 6?
Yes. 1 to 6 weeks of age, the baby.
1 to 6 months.
That's the 20. That's the 20, 25, 28 to 30 ounces in 24 hours.
Oh, okay. So after 1 month old, from the from 1 month until they start consuming a substantial amount of solids around the 6 months.
Yeah.
Then we're looking at like around 30 ounces a day.
That's what I like to just say 30 because it's right in the middle. Like that's about 30 ounces. Yes.
Okay. You got that, friends? About 30 ounces. You heard it.
And so Joyanna, for you personally also, that's really encouraging because if you're bringing home around 25, you're probably breastfeeding him at least once, another time, maybe twice.
Yeah.
And so and especially going back to your prior question from from your client. I don't know if you say client or patient, but your group together. I would say around 3 to 4 months, it's really, 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 really common that babies start getting a little bit more particular about if they're going to have bottle refusal or breast refusal. They kind of start bending towards a norm that they prefer. Okay. And then also around 3 months is really common when a lot of babies start sleeping through the night. And so when you have that combination of that, we're seeing probably 1 to 2 feeds drop. And so that's when a lot of women have milk supply issues because the milk at night is ceasing. And so that's kind of a combination of a couple of things that happen around the 3 to 4 month mark.
Okay. And you see oftentimes too, as that's sort of this 3, 4, 5 month middle ground is when we're really adjusting to being back at work for moms who are working and then pumping. And so we have to factor in cortisol, stress hormone, which if your cortisol levels are higher, your body is essentially suppressing the milk producing and more milk releasing hormones that are required to work in tandem with you to produce the milk and then release the milk while you're pumping. So we're feeling more stressed as moms at work trying to make this numbers game work out. And we're transitioning from, for moms who are going from primarily exclusively breastfeeding into pumping, that's this tricky game because now you are looking at numbers all the time, whereas before you weren't looking at all the numbers. And so there's even stress factors around, my baby needs this many ounces in today. I've got a lower day and I didn't make that many ounces. And now what are we going to do? It's that it becomes mathematical. In reality, it's not mathematical, but yet our brains have now this added anxiety over. You probably fluctuated, hourly while you were breastfeeding and for certain every day, but you didn't have the mathematical component of it while you're breastfeeding. Now, exclusively pumping is a whole different story, but still you'll have variance in that too, because milk is still hormone driven. So we kind of, we touched on milk supply. How do you know you have a low supply? Some of the issues of oversupply. We're talking now about pumping. Let's just give those quick tips on pumping. I know we've hit this before in prior breastfeeding together live. We talked about some quick tips on how to boost your milk supply while pumping. Hit it, girl.
Great question. Okay. So you're saying the question saying not looking at your equipment itself. You're thinking of just, I need a quick answer. My milk supply is low. What do I do? Correct? For the pumper.
Well, let's do the, let's break that into 2 things. So quick tips on how to increase your milk output, like, Perfect. Your milk production. Okay. And then like the pumping equipment separately so that it's easy for people to find that as they rewatch the YouTube.
Perfect. Okay. So if you have low milk supply, your goal is what else can I get out? And so the easiest thing, one of the easiest solutions in my perspective is you have 2 options, the baby or the pump. And so if you choose the baby, you're thinking, I'm going to have a 24 to 48 honeymoon with my baby. So what that means is you're set aside all the other agendas, the laundry, the things going on, and your goal for the next 24 to 48 hours is how can I keep my baby as close to me as possible to tell my body my baby needs more food. And even if it's just comfort sucking, you're still working on those hormones. Your body, even think about if you're an ounce short every day and your baby is just getting
It's
little
true.
snacks of 10 mLs, 20 mLs, it does add up. And so for 24 to 48 hours, basically, you don't have limits to when you're feeding, how often you're feeding your baby. So if the baby shows a hunger cue in any way, you go ahead and breastfeed your baby. A lot of skin to skin, if possible, wear your baby in a baby carrier as much as possible. Just have the baby close and accessible to the breast so that they kind of can smell it. Oh, they're nuzzling in. Let's just feed you again. But that's kind of the natural way to just try to get things working again. And I do have to caveat, this is in a situation where like you prior everything was going well and you just kind of had a dip.
Yeah.
If there's other things we have to look for, if there's a tongue tie issue or oral anatomy issue or something else going on that we need to work through, that's something else. But if you are doing great and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this is not working, my supply is low, cuddle your baby and just get things working again. The pump way is, I used to have a supervisor or my mentor tell me a pump in a movie. So basically, you watch a 2-hour movie, you pump for 10 minutes, rest for 10 minutes, pump for 10 minutes, rest for 10 minutes, and do that 2 days in a row. Watch 2 Hallmarks or whatever you like. And usually, what you're trying to mimic is a growth spurt. So you're trying to mimic those crazy times when the baby's just freaking out in the middle of the night, waking up every 30 minutes. You're kind of self-inducing that. So the important caveat to that as well is you have to make sure your flange is fit correctly for it to come out. But even if you do this for 2 hours and you're only seeing like an ounce or less of milk and it's very low, it's still again just like Joyanna was talking about cortisol, it's hitting those hormones to try to tell your body we need more. And then 2 consecutive days, usually on the 3rd day, you will yield more than the first. So
so
baby,
the goal is stimulation, but not production. So we shouldn't feel discouraged if we are halfway through the movie, and even though I've pumped every 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, that I only have like an ounce and a half collected because it's post feed.
Because you didn't have it. You didn't have it. No, it doesn't magically appear. You didn't have it before, so you're just warming up your body again and saying, "Hey, body, I actually need more. I'm telling you that I need you to produce more." So you wouldn't expect it, even though you want to. You got to give yourself a little bit of time.
And one of the ways that I explain this to people in the hospital, especially when we see those cluster feeding, is the first time that a baby demonstrates cluster feeding is typically within 3 days after birth and typically after the first 24 hours. So they're super sleepy in this first 24-hour window, but then they wake up and they start doing exactly what Abby's talking about, of this clustering their feeds close together. So the way that I explain cluster feeding is sort of like pre-ordering a gift for a wedding. So you're going to go to a wedding on Saturday for your friend, but it's Thursday and Amazon takes 2 days to show up. So you're not going to show up to the wedding on Wednesday and expect your gift to be there if you didn't already order it on Thursday. So your baby pre-orders the milk supply in cluster feeding before they actually have the calorie need for that milk. And they realized innately sort of these like, them tuning into how your body works. In the very beginning, they're still feeding off some of this fat and calories that they have from being in utero in this, first 3 days scenario. But they'll go ahead and they'll put in this what feels like never ending request for milk. And they act like they're starving, right? Like they are feverish and angry when you take them off the breast, or you'll be like, okay, we had a rock star feed. We've been nursing for an hour now. I'm going to go pee and take a nap. And then you put the baby down and they start like rooting around again. You're like, no, there's no way. Like I can't do it. And there's no way you're still hungry. And there's no way there's anything in here. Well, what we're doing in stimulating a cluster feeding session, essentially that's what we're doing, right, Abby, with this pump in a movie, is you're putting in the pre-demand before you expect that milk supply to show up on that third day. It's the Thursday to Saturday wedding gift arrival time, right?
I love that. And one thing that you also need to know is I hear that really often. There's nothing left. Like, or if I there's kind of a misconception that if you feed your baby too soon between the next feed, that there's not going to be anything there, and then when the baby needs to eat, there won't be um I'm not having correct verbiage for it today, but basically, like if I hold off, then there's going to be more when the baby needs it. But actually,
Right.
the way that the breasts work is the more often your breasts are emptied, like the more frequent, the more volume is created. So if you fed your baby one time in a 3 hour time span, if you fed your baby 10 times, your body will make more milk than if you waited the 3 hours. The volume will be less, if that makes sense. So if you're
Yeah.
trying to increase supply, you're thinking, I'm feeding my baby more frequently throughout the day versus
Right.
longer stretches. And
That
again, it's
makes
playing on your
sense.
hormones.
And that reminds me, there's a couple of things right now that I'm doing to increase my milk supply. One, I bought a Willow pump, which at this moment is not my friend because it has not learned my body and my body has not learned the Willow. And so we are not driving together. But I can't take it back because that's what the rules are. So I am trying to figure it out. So here's one of the things. I can't bring it to work with me yet because I will not pull out it will not pull the amount of milk that I can pull from my pump.
Yeah.
And so I can't risk bringing it to work because I need those ounces. But here's what I can do. In the mornings while I'm getting ready for work, I put on my Willow. This is after I've fed the baby for the morning. Okay. So my little guy, truth be told, wakes up like, I don't know, probably 3 times a night. I don't count. And that is for my mental health. I stopped
Good
checking the
job.
time
Good job.
and I don't count how many times it happens. I just measure how tired I am the next day. That's it. But at some point I probably should be like, okay, we're down to 2 feedings or 3 feedings because I just feel like it's just always changing. So it stressed me out. 4 kids into this. The first 2 kids I counted. The third kid, I was back and forth. My fourth kid, I'm like, no more counting for me. But what I'll do is I'll feed in that morning feed. And then while I'm getting ready for work, I put on my Willow. So now anything I can collect is just bonus. It's increased stimulation. It catches my hormones at a high from being in the morning, because if you're trying to throw in extra stimulation at the end, that's also usually your lowest production hours anyways. Okay. So, and you'll notice that in your pumping, your highest pumping volumes are typically in the morning and during the day. And as the afternoon goes on into the evening, those are your lowest output. So I threw in this bonus pumping session. I will also try to pump either on my way home or after I get home. If my baby right now, he's getting a bottle of formula in the afternoon or evening while I'm working. I've only had to do that once while I've been at home. But I don't know, we might just add it in there just to help him, continue to gain weight. But that's like adding in these bonus pumping sessions, as long as they're consistent and not sporadic, can increase that stimulation. And the other reason that I don't count with his feedings at night is because I need him to stimulate that increase in supply. So I just allow him to give as much demand request for that milk. And so in turn, my milk supply will, go up. So those are things that don't take me a lot of extra effort. It's sort of just, adding in a small way, because right now I just don't have much bandwidth to be able to sit down, make this calculated effort to really meaningfully pull in, 2 extra bottles worth of milk a day. And so, if you're finding yourself in that spot where you're like, well, I just want to kind of get ahead a little bit, adding in something like that pumping session after the first morning feeding, and keeping some consistency with it. Now, I don't work every day since I'm a nurse. I work, 3 days a week, but sometimes those turn into, close together because the week's all running together. But those are some kind of small ways that you can work towards increasing supply without, having to be super intentional. And then Abbey, I appreciate all the things that you shared about how to intentionally boost that too. What about supplements? I hear a lot of people ask about supplements. Is there a supplement like brand that you recommend?
I actually was going to ask if we could talk about supplements. Supplements are hard because everyone's body is different. And so you have to find the supplement that works with your body. That's kind of the biggest thing. So my body, I could tell you, Joyanna, like, this is what I swear by, you take this, but honestly, it might not be the trick for you. And so, it's really frustrating actually, because I've seen people spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on supplements. I'm going to throw out some big names. I'm going to throw out some options for you, but you really have to kind of dabble. And I like to say, try something for a week, because you don't really know how it's going to affect your body. Give it a little bit of time. So the number one thing is, are you hydrated? So be thinking, and we say like drink to thirst, but really some women just drink such little water, especially if you're really stressed and you're going back to work. If you're having a hard time getting water in, think, can I drink coconut water, or just something really hydrating to my body? Do I feel thirsty, or am I regularly eliminating? How can you, your breasts are actually a sinus passage. So like, you need fluid to clear them out, to keep things moving correctly for your lymphatic system. I know it is crazy. So that's a whole nother soapbox I want to get on someday, but it's crazy. So next time. So are you drinking water? Are you hydrated? And if not, do I need to do more electrolyte drinks in my diet just to help? There was like a trend for a long time drinking this special Starbucks drink, but what it was coconut milk and coconut water. And so that is what helps a lot. So number one, that some famous herbals, you've probably heard of fenugreek before. That's an age-old one. There's really not very many setbacks to it, except it does usually smell like maple syrup. Like, your excretions will start smelling a little bit like maple syrup. And that's considered normal, taking it. Usually in a couple of days, people have a lot of success with fenugreek. The only thing is, you don't want to take it if you have a history of any thyroid issues or blood sugar issues. So if you've ever had any trouble with that, I know it's really interesting, but they're finding it could actually do the opposite. So fenugreek is great for the average person. That's kind of your go-to lactation herbal, unless you have a history of low blood sugar, high blood sugar, or thyroid problems in any way, like hyper or hypo. So that, and then the other one I like to, if you have any history of, if your breasts didn't grow very much during pregnancy, if you think you have like less breast tissue than you would expect, or you have a history of different stuff like that in your puberty journey, there's something called goat's rue. And it's really great. And that can help increase your breast tissue. And it does help a lot of low productive mothers that didn't see breast growth during pregnancy. So
what is that one called?
Goat's rue, RUE. Goat's rue, RUE. So goat like the animal, and then RUE. I can put it in the chat as well. So that's another go-to. The third one, I just have two more. One is called moringa, Moringa. You want to make sure you're looking for clean versions of moringa. So like, make sure there's no additives or different things in the brand that you're using. Mother's Love is actually a pretty clean brand. It's a blue bottle. It's called Mother's Love, and they make a lot of these supplements, but they don't usually add a lot of crazy things in. And moringa is really good if you had a very eventful birth story, meaning like you lost a lot of blood, you had a lot of stressors in your life, moringa is like a wellness herb. And it really, but it also is great for lactation. So it just kind of helps boost everything up together. That's moringa, Moringa. And then the last one that I want to hit on is called Brewers Yeast. And you probably heard of like lactation cookies, lactation brownies, lactation drinks. It's this stinky powder. It smells terrible. But like for me personally, in my lactation story, just with my children, like I will add a fourth of a cup of brewer's yeast to some cookies that I make, and you can make really clean versions of cookies with like no, just like unrefined, like just only using unrefined sugar. Am I saying that correctly? Non-refined sugars.
Yes.
And thank
Unrefined,
you.
yes.
Yes, unrefined. And like within 24 hours, like I will significantly be leaking milk or different things. So again, that's me. But I've made some for my friends, and it's like, wow, these taste great, but it doesn't do anything for me. So you have to decide. You just have to try out what works for you. And then the yeah, those are the main ones that I go to. The other brand, Mother's Love and then Legendary, are kind of the two most popular brands, I would say.
Have you heard of the brand Holistic Lactation? That like an advanced lactation formula.
Yes,
Do you
I
like
have.
them?
Yes, I've never actually tried them myself, or I haven't had a patient use them before, but I've seen it. So,
well, I'll have
you
to
used
report
them?
back because,
Okay.
I was thinking about it because the lactation team at the hospital, one of the consultants had talked to me about trying it out. She's like, "Now, Joyanna, I haven't tried it. I haven't had anybody try it, but if you're having low milk supply, like, can you try it and then let me know how it works?"
Totally,
so
do it. Tell us.
I've been thinking about trying it out so that we can see. I'm allergic to coconut, so I can't do coconut water electrolytes. But one of the things that I have done is, and I just had done this practice while pregnant, I would get headaches kind of in the afternoon. And my goal is I have a 1 liter water bottle. So this guy is 1 liter. And my goal is to drink through 3 of them a day. Okay. So I always tell people while pregnant and nursing, 3 liters of water a day is like the goal that you're getting to. So the easiest way to track it for me is just 3 of these water bottles. Now, one of those water bottles I'll make exciting in the afternoon and put electrolytes in. The thing that people don't realize about water is that if your cells don't have electrolytes, they can't pull the water into the cell to hydrate. So that's how like you could just be drinking and drinking and drinking after you've, had a workout or been out in the hot sun, and you still are dehydrated. Why? Because your body has sweated off all these electrolytes, and like the little cells, they can't pull the water into them unless they have the little gatekeepers that open that door and allow that water to be absorbed. And those gatekeepers are your electrolytes. So I started, instead of just boosting my water, every afternoon I'd do an electrolyte pack while I was pregnant. And then in pumping and nursing, that also gives me renewed energy in the afternoon, right? That like 3 o'clock kind of like, well, we still have some day left, but I don't have any energy left kind of lull, which is usually where people go grabbing for sugar snacks. And I find like, oh, it's a little pick me up. Don't use Gatorade. Gatorade is full of garbage. It's full of dyes and syrups and weird stuff your body doesn't need. Okay. It's just branded well and people know the name. And so they take it. And it's terrible for you. Okay. So do not go grab your Gatorade or your Powerade. It's the same deal. There is something I like that's called Noon tablets. And they're really low in sugar, but they are a good electrolyte replenisher. And they're little tablets that come in a little tube like this size. And I just pop one in my water bottle. So I like Noon tablets. And then I also like the IV. It's like liquid IV. I think I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. There's some at Costco. We're a big Costco family. We like to benefit from buying things in bulk so we don't have to pay as much per unit. but those, something like that, as long as it's not loaded with a bunch of sugars, you need some sugar in order to mobilize those electrolytes. But as long as it's not loaded full of it, that's a great way to help, just keeping yourself hydrated and then making you actually drink it, because it's tasty and it's fun and not just another bottle of water you have to drink for the day. So it's like kind of like those lactation cookies. You make them into a cookie and you just munch on them all day. But Abby, you'll have to make me some of those cookies, or send me your best recipe with them.
Yes, I will.
So we can try some. That sounds fun. All right, friends. Well, thanks for joining us in all of our chat. I'll recap a couple of the highlights here. So today we chatted about milk supply and took some questions on how to increase that milk supply, how to identify if you have an issue with your milk supply, how to know when you need to supplement, and some of our goals. So for supplementing, like what are the targets that we're hitting? For a baby under 2 weeks, our goal is that they be back to birth weight by about 2 weeks of life. And then after that 2 weeks, we're looking at about, how much did you say after 1 month is 30 ounces a day, roughly? Okay. Abby's giving me the nod here. Okay.
Yes.
So
until they start solids.
Until they start solids. Okay. Does it go down after they start solids, or is it just kind of fluctuate baby to baby?
It really fluctuates baby to baby. It doesn't go up. So some babies drop to needing significantly less, but the American Academy of Pediatrics does say that breast milk or formula should be the sole baby's sole calorie intake until a year. So yes. The baby is still relying on that milk.
Yeah. So one of the things that we always used to say in our breastfeeding groups and is that food before 1 is just for fun. To sort of like give this reminder that, like, yes, you're introducing your baby to foods, but no, you're not swapping out food for nutrients. It's just, I see food as a bonus feature. From 6 to 12 months, it's a bonus. They're adding it in, but we're not like exchanging, here, I will feed you 2 jars of these pureed vegetables and you go down 1 bottle of milk, right? Because vegetables are essentially just fiber, carbohydrates, and micronutrients. And your milk is fats also, which are just so essential, and all of the proteins. So it's not like a 1-for-1 swap. And then we talked about low milk supply, some quick tips to do the pump in a movie. If you want to intentionally build that milk supply up, we did that's 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, right, Abby? Okay, I'm just giving a nod again. There we go. That's all the approval I'm looking for, Abby.
Great. It's a legitimate nod. That is correct.
Okay, great. And then for passively building that milk supply, I'm just adding in a morning pumping session. You can too, to kind of give your body a little bit of extra demand. Speaking of demand, feeding baby on demand for a designated, I think I've heard it called like a nursing honeymoon, where you take baby and you are skin to skin with baby. I've got a 6-month-old, so he doesn't lay on my chest anymore, even though I would love to convince him to. He's like a squiggly worm. I can't even get him to nurse without like doing some kind of rhythmic dance with his legs while he's attached. Like, really, I have to take a video sometime. Like, what is he even doing? I have no idea, but he's all over the place. So, yes, now I got myself totally sidetracked because I'm just remembering our last nursing session and bouncing little legs here. So
I love it.
Okay, so the recaps, milk supply, and then pumping, adding in that pumping at the movie, 10 minutes pump, 10 minutes break, 10-minute pump, 10-minute break, especially waiting at least 2 to 3 days before, on that 3rd day, expecting milk to be there. Don't expect any milk the first 2 days, and don't be discouraged if there's not milk. Any milk that arrives and surprises you is just a bonus. it's that you can just pour and collect into one bottle, and maybe it's something measurable. All of the drops count, okay? And then we talked supplements. Last thing we chatted at length about was supplements. So if you have thyroid issues or blood sugar high or low, you may want to steer clear of fenugreek because it can mess with that. If you do not have those issues, fenugreek is a great supplement. Goat rue, Goatrue. Am I spelling that correct, Abby?
Yes, yes.
Goats
Goats as in many goats.
Many goats.
Goats
Add an S to your goat. Okay, goat's rue. Moringa. Mother's Love, you said, is the brand, one of the brands that you'd recommend?
Yes, yeah,
okay,
they have
Legendary?
all of them. Yes.
Okay.
And you're trying out the new one.
I'm going to try out the, I think it's called Holistic Lactation, and we will have a chat about that one after I try it, and we'll see the results. Abbey also is an advocate for Brewers Yeast, which she will have to furnish us a recipe for some of those lactation cookies. So that's it. That's our chat for today. Abbey, I'm so glad that you're here with us. YouTube friends, I'm really happy that you're here with us. So that you don't miss our next Q&A, please like and subscribe to this channel, and you'll get notified next time we're going live. Abbey and I come live to take your questions every week. So if you can please drop some questions in the comments, and then we will be excited to answer those questions and get you the support that you need. Motherhood Together is going to be opening up soon for enrollment. I'm really, really excited about it. Again, Motherhood Together is the ongoing membership for new moms that helps drop your stress so that you can spend more time enjoying your baby and enjoying the support that you need that's ongoing, uninterrupted, by professionals and experts like Abbey and myself. So super excited to be here today and for all the things that are unfolding. Abbey, we will see you next week at the next Breastfeeding Together.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye for now, friends.
Goodbye.